All right, good afternoon. We are here for another bargaining session with Jespa in the district, beginning at here 4 o'clock on May 9th. This is our 6th bargaining session of the bargaining season, and since we are live streaming, we're going to go ahead and go around the table with introductions. And I'll start. I'm Phil Bedford, Executive Director of Employee Relations.
Matt Polero, Chief Student Success Officer.
Hi, Mark Strelo, Director of Custodial Services.
Sarah Smith, JCPK Preschool.
John Duran, JCEA President and Electrician.
Jennifer Munoz, Secretary, Jespa Vice President, and JSOP President.
Xander Kashub, Kitchen Manager and Jespa President.
Darcy Hassler, Paraprofessional.
Trevor Byrne, Bus Driver and JCTA President.
Vicki Flores, Jespa Staff.
Jessica Goodkin, Director of Special Education.
Deneen Cusack, Director of Employee Relations.
Katie Jeter, Director of Resources for Food Service.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think we do have a tentative agenda for this evening. And looking at it, and if you have modifications, want to change order, etc., based upon your plan and preparations, we're certainly willing to do what we need to do. So it looks like we'll have a Jespa compensation benefits counter proposal this evening, followed by your counter proposal for Article 6, our counter proposal for Article 4. We do have tentatively scheduled a dinner break at 6 o'clock, so in less than 2 hours. So not sure where we will end up, but just wanted to put that on the docket so that we have that as a reminder. And if we need to make changes or modifications, switch things around, certainly at your pleasure. So having said that, I guess we're ready to turn it over to you for number 3 on the agenda, if you're ready to do that. If not, let's talk about the agenda and possible modifications.
It looks good. One thing that we were talking about, we believe Article 6, there's a lot of ties to Article 6 and compensation. So we really wanted to nail down compensation before we finish Article 6.
So would we, in consideration of that, Xander, more than likely, depending upon the where we're at with compensation and the benefits proposal, it sounds like you want to separate those two between that and Article 6. So maybe we'll need to take a break after you present your compensation and benefits counter.
If we need to, yeah. We just know Article 6. There's a lot in there that we are going to try and talk about with compensation as well, and so we believe that it's hard to reconcile Article 6 with that before doing compensation.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you.
Okay, you ready for compensation? I'll drive. You all talk.
Okay. So we went back and looked at the proposal, the language, and last time y'all had presented a slideshow with your counter on it, and there wasn't actually any language in here that was updated. So we kind of went back and tried to input your presentation into this as a counter. So yes, we'll try and follow this as well as we can, knowing that the language wasn't countered. So what we're going to counter with wages, you have a 35 cents on the table. We are going down to $1.50 from our $2. can you go back up a bit? So the district's counter was $20 additional to healthcare, and we are countering with our original proposal of 100% only coverage, 80% coverage for the others. It's a major priority for us, and we would like to have a discussion with you about if you have a dollar amount on the table, how can we get to a percentage? It's a major priority for us, like we've been talking about, and we want to understand what the district's going to do to get us there. And this is, again, where it gets a little fishy, just because language, you didn't counter our language, you just give us a presentation. So I think it's, when it starts up there, we wanted to add back into the compensation, or kind of move it from the other article. I believe it was Article 6, when we were talking about payroll systems issues, and trying to implement a paid twice a monthly system. So we added that into this language because we didn't see it anywhere else, and so we just wanted to make sure that got in here. And with your counter last time, you didn't speak to holidays at all, specifically Juneteenth and MLK Day, things that we had in here. So we would like to understand where you are with those holidays. And then we are wanting to introduce a new wage schedule. And the way that this has kind of gone over this last year with an MOU that we reached last year was this work is supposed to be done by September in 2023. We understand that you have an interest of kind of recrafting this MOU into a new one, and we don't accept that. We want to introduce a wage schedule now, so we can implement it at the beginning of next year. And we have that wage schedule designed already. Basically, we are closing the gaps. We would like to add 2 longevity steps at the top and make all of the steps in the schedule 4% from step to step. And I just, reiterating that this was an MOU that we agreed to last year, and we would love to see it happen because, again, it's incredibly important for us and our members. I believe that's it.
And you'll send us a copy.
Yep.
Do we have any questions? Maybe we should scroll back to the top just so that we can. So just for clarification, your number 1 is coming down from $2 in addition to what was already agreed upon for this coming year, the steps and the $1 cell. Your original proposal was $2, adding $2 onto the $1. And so what you're saying now is instead of that, you're adding $1.50.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, if you want to scroll down a little more, that'd be great. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So on 5, the additional language here, just to clarify, the twice a month pay is in addition to the partial pay for new employees. So this twice a month is specific to all employees.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we did add, so that would be implemented in the 24-25 school year.
One of the things that I'll just throw into the conversation with our proposed number 6 with regards to the holiday pay, how it currently is set up, the 6 days are included in the hourly rate that's on the schedule. And we know that the request is to not have it included on the schedule and have it designated and showing up on pay stubs so that it says for January you received pay for holiday pay from December. One of the things that we are hearing from employees is that for employees who do get overtime, that this is impacting them detrimentally or could detrimentally impact them because their hourly rate is higher than what it normally would be because the holidays are figured into the hourly rate. And if they are allowed overtime, their overtime rate will be less by putting this in. And we certainly, that's our proposal as far as having it pulled out of the hourly wage schedule. But I think one of the things that we are hearing from employees is if you do that, that's going to impact any overtime I get because my overtime is time and a half for that inflated hourly rate. So just as, not to be unintended consequence, but that's what we're hearing.
Well, we had a class action grievance on this issue when employees did not repeatedly see that they don't have any holiday pay when they're guaranteed holidays. And it took quite a lot of digging to figure out why they weren't getting paid. And they call payroll, they call us every holiday. So we had a lot of discussion about that, about overtime. So if a certain subsection of employees are getting inflated pay that impacts their overtime and they get more overtime as a result, then why don't we do that for everybody was the other option. So this has been grieved. There was a settlement, and this is your proposal. And I find that the constant comments about what the settlement was to try to say that employees are upset about this is divisive. I mean, it's been settled that the district was unfairly inflating pay to trick people and then pretend there's paid holidays when there's not. We tried in good faith to fix it, thought we had, but it just keeps coming up. And now people are upset about that, sure. But we've also raised much of their pay over the past several years. I mean, their overtime at the time that this was thought to be a good idea, I don't even think it's legal necessarily to do that. So I don't know. We had a grievance settlement on this, and folks want transparency in their pay, I think is the number one thing. So if we want to inflate people's pay so they make more, let's do that at the bargaining table transparently. And that's what we're here to do.
Absolutely, Vicki. And there's no bone of contention. That's just the point that in the duration between our conversations, some of the things that we've heard, and it's not to create divisiveness. We just want it to be known that there are some that don't necessarily agree with this, but we've presented it and we support it and we're on the same page with you. And that's a part of our original proposal. And we do support that. We're going to have to work together to help people understand the why behind it.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
I mean, truly what the district should do is just pay the holidays. If the pay rate is the pay rate, add the holidays. If they're making overtime on what the pay rate is, add their holidays and make sure they're paid fairly. I think the whole thing was a mess, whoever thought of it to begin with. But we did have that discussion on our own side. Like, if we agree to take the holidays back out, it hurts. That was our own argument in the grievance. So we don't disagree, but the overwhelming, what we should be doing is being transparent and honest. And even though it might hurt us to change a practice, that's what we want. We want transparency and honesty.
Can you scroll down, and just see 9 through, yeah, that's probably good right there. Thank you.
We just copied the MOU directly. And I understand that people at this table were not at the table last time, but I'm sorry if the information was not provided that this is needed to be done.
No, thank you. I just wanted to read it. Thank you.
Any additional questions from our team? Okay. I think at this point we would like to take a caucus and have a conversation about your proposal. If you could send that to us.
Sure. Can I just mention one more thing? We talked about it, I think, when we made our proposal, but with opting into Healthy School Meals for All, and with the funding coming in from the district, there's money that is set for food service workers who work in a kitchen's wages. So I wanted to make sure we talk about the sources of funding and what has to go to wages. We have special education funding. We have the School Finance Act passed at a lot of money coming into the district this year from the School Finance Act and the buy down of the BS factor. So, but one thing to keep in mind is the money that's earmarked just for food service workers. So I don't know if you know, Katie, much about the plan that was submitted and where that money is sitting, because it's not in the district's proposal.
I can speak with Beth about that too, because I know there are timelines involved at the state level. So
How long do you need for caucus?
Probably 30. Let's do 30 minutes.
Okay.
And then
Sounds good.
if we need to extend, I'll text you. How's that?
Okay.
And yeah, if you could send us what you have there in writing, that'd be awesome.
Sounds good.
Great. Thank you. Okay, we're back to continue our bargaining session. Appreciate the opportunity to review your compensation proposal, and appreciate the fact that we were in caucus for quite a while, and then also took a little dinner break as quickly as we could. And we're ready to continue the conversation. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt, and then we'll banter back and forth.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, I just want to echo, we appreciate the time that you allowed us in caucus to have extensive conversations around your proposal. And partially, what we're taking into consideration as we're reviewing the proposal that you've put together for us is really with the anticipated increase in revenue to the general fund. So the $50 million that we talked about last week really has to take into consideration all expenditures that the district is going to incur. And I want to say out loud that that money is primarily going to be reinvested into our employees. And the reason why I say primarily is because we do know that we will have some non-personnel expenditures that money will have to be used for. So for example, we've seen an increase in utilities cost. So that would be one example of some non-personnel costs. But ultimately, the majority of that money is going to be reinvested into our employees. So I want to say that out loud. And we really have to take that in consideration as we're working through your proposal and the cost analysis of that proposal that we've started to complete. So with that said, we are going to need some more time to be thoughtful in our response to your proposal. We would certainly be happy to follow up with you on the 19th with our counter. And we do have a few questions that we think would be helpful for us to talk through that would help us return on the 19th to respond to that. That's okay. But I'll pause there to see if there are any questions. Okay. So our first question is regarding the proposed COLA. Is that in addition to the wage scales? So is it wage scales and COLA?
Yes.
Okay.
It would be both. And what we proposed for the wage schedule is to condense the schedule so there aren't longevity gaps, and then to standardize what the percentage is between steps. The COLA, if we've been kind of waiting for the district to really be serious about talking about the schedule so that we could start working on it. So we've presented it a few times, and if you're ready to talk about it, then we can get into the nitty gritty about how it works. Do we add it to the base and everything flows up? How do we work the money part of it out?
Okay.
So we are definitely interested in having that conversation, as you know.
Yep. Thank you for clarifying that. One question as we kind of looked through the initial spreadsheet that you shared that aligns with your proposal around the wage scales, one thing that stood out to us is that some employees will benefit, say, at a minimum of $3 of an increase, while others might benefit above $7. And the reason that was somewhat surprising is because to me that stands out as kind of a significant disparity. And based on previous conversations, we thought that your interest was not in creating more disparity, but creating less disparity between scales. So could you help us just understand the differentiation piece there?
Do you mean by using a percentage?
Yeah, with the 4%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have an MOU that you all saw to work on wage schedules. We have attempted to have many meetings. We've had a few. We did present a flat dollar amount version of the schedule. Phil is the only one in the room, I think, on your side that was there at a recent meeting. And the district HR team people shamed us for that too. And told us all of the reasons why we were wrong about that. So when we changed, we said we could model it in a bunch of different ways. It can be percentages, it can be dollar amounts. It's done different ways. I've talked to my colleagues all around the state and country about how they bargain wage schedules. You can do both. We just have to work together to agree on how we're going to do it and why we're doing it the way we're doing it. So when you have percentages, I mean, maybe Scott could come tell us why the percentages are important. But we got the message that the district would never go for dollar amounts and that it's percentages. We've explained why we've done flat dollar amount COLAs in the past multiple times, and it was for equity, like maybe you're alluding to, because we needed to raise the bottom. And a flat dollar amount does more for people at the bottom where wages were staggering. So by doing a flat dollar COLA that moves the base up and then percentages in experience with your steps, it was a good mix that we thought maybe you all would entertain.
Okay. No, I appreciate the clarity and
Okay.
the historical context there. And please know that my intention was not to shame. It was just a question based on previous conversations. I was trying to make sense of the 4%. So thank you for that.
Yeah, there is currently, all the step schedule. If you look at it, there's some people get steps that are 4 or above, and some people get steps that are 2 or, so making it a percentage that's the same for everyone is a step in the right direction. Is it the best way to do it? I don't know. There might be another better way to do it, and happy to hear any suggestions.
But I'm hearing that you're open to alternatives. That's just a starting point.
We just want to talk about it and get somewhere. Yes.
Understood. And then the next one is regarding holidays. So help us understand what the kind of specific proposal is for Juneteenth. My understanding is that employees' work schedules who overlap with Juneteenth currently get paid. So like year-round employee, for example. But if your work calendar does not overlap with Juneteenth, then you wouldn't get paid. So I guess the point of clarity is what exactly is the ask on holidays, just to clear that up.
Okay. We found out that Juneteenth was added without negotiating. We think holidays are a mandatory subject of bargaining. So the first point was by adding it without bargaining, that violated the contract. We pondered filing a grievance. We decided to make sure that you all knew, like adding Juneteenth adds holidays to mostly administrators, while the bulk of school-based still don't have MLK Day when everyone else does as a paid holiday. So as a point of civil rights discussion, our lowest paid people, paraprofessionals, have asked over and over again for MLK Day, civil rights leader, and somebody makes a unilateral decision to add Juneteenth, which benefits the highest paid employees in this district with another day off. So as a point of equity, give school-based employees MLK Day is the ask.
Vicki, just as a point of clarification, I just want to make sure that we're aware, with Juneteenth being applied, it also applies to roughly 400 people in custodial services.
Yes, sir, it does. And our maintenance and our ed center and year-round techs and secretaries.
Just to add to the conversation around the additional holiday pay, I don't think there's any intent on the part of the district to unilaterally do anything with regards to adding that Juneteenth. It's become a recognized holiday by the district, and there probably are some assumptions that should be made that we should be recognizing that holiday. And so really, and going back to Matt's question, is it our understanding that the ask is to include Juneteenth as holiday pay for folks who work during the month of June and have that apply to them? And you don't have to respond, but that's really the question. And then the second part of it is we understand that year-round, or excuse me, school year employees who currently aren't getting the MLK Day would like to have the MLK Day included. Is that our understanding?
I think I caught that, and yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's simple enough and should be easy enough. Okay.
Thank you.
We want to also revisit the conversation around benefits in looking at your desire to have the percentage base versus a flat dollar amount. One of the things that is a wondering for us in looking at that, based upon the 100% employee-only coverage, just speaking of that specifically, is your intent then to maybe intentionally or unintentionally see or anticipate that all employees who are benefits eligible would probably move to the highest cost DHMO plan with the Kaiser plan at, I think, $696 per employee per month? Is that what you would imply happening or anticipate happening? Because if you all of a sudden have, we do have one plan that covers 100% for the employee, our highest high deductible plan, which obviously isn't our greatest plan. And so our wondering is would your expectation be, or we should anticipate that all employees who are benefits eligible would migrate to the DHMO plan?
My guess is if the district paid for 100% on the other plans, then they'd choose a better plan that doesn't cost them so much out of pocket and a high deductible. Yeah, I don't know if y'all have discussed that at Benefits Advisory Committee or gotten that far. But I think we have a survey out about scenarios, but our guess is employees would definitely choose a better plan.
Yeah, that would only make sense. I just wanted to make sure that we were on the same page with that and we weren't missing something in our interpretation. The other piece of it is in looking at, in talking about 100% paid, one of the things to anticipate is, or going to not even 100% paid, going to a percentage plan, is that the amounts are going to change on an annual basis, and for the district to be able to forecast that is really quite difficult. But in anticipating budgets and forecasting budgets on a flat dollar amount, budgets can be established, et cetera, and then rates can be or amounts can be determined. So if you go to a percentage base, okay, and let's assume it's less than 100. Essentially what we're saying is no matter what happens with how much rates increase from the carriers, regardless of who the carriers are, that those percentages would stay the same. And I'm thinking too that is your request like in perpetuity, that if we came to a percentage increase, that and we know that we negotiate benefits and compensation and benefits on a yearly basis, but once you establish a percentage amount, it's hard to change that amount. Is that really what your intent would be moving forward?
So just real quick, just for context, I sit on the Benefits Advisory Committee, so does Sarah and Xander, and Phil, you're the only one that's been in on those conversations. So just for context, or where we're coming from with benefits. Back in January, we had Jay, who is the person that works for Lockton, who is our insurance broker, come in and gave us the numbers, the increases. In that meeting, I spoke up and I said that those increases were unacceptable and disgusting. And we needed to have a conversation. I requested to have the Kaiser president present at the next meeting to discuss that. They were talking about it was inflation. I said it's not inflation, it's corporate greed. They were talking about trends. I said, we're not trends, we're people with needs, healthcare needs. And so Lockton agreed to bring Kaiser to the next meeting. At the next meeting, they did have Kaiser's regional president as well as the vice president. And Jespa, the Benefits Advisory Committee members, we were ready to have a conversation with Kaiser. And we were excited because at that first meeting, the district also agreed with us and said, yeah, we want to have a conversation with Kaiser about this. It's a 20% increase. It's unacceptable. You're right. We need to have a conversation. And we were excited that we were going to collaborate on doing something beneficial on benefits. But during that next meeting, when Kaiser showed up, before the meeting started, Jen Jones came in and completely undermined and dismantled what we had already built, that we wanted to have a conversation with Kaiser, and said, I've educated myself on benefits. I consulted the benefits experts. I feel comfortable with where these numbers are coming from. I feel fine. And these conversations are recorded so they can be verified. You can all go back and listen to them. And that was her before the meeting started. When you say, I feel comfortable with these numbers, I feel fine where this is coming from, then that means that you're taking on the responsibility of that increase, because the district felt good, felt comfortable, felt that they were in a good place to accept those numbers. I never said it was okay. Sarah never said it was okay. Xander, the Benefits Advisory Committee, our members never said that this was okay. A 20% increase is already costing in, for myself, a pay increase is going to leave me negative every month, $491.73. How I'm making almost $500 less a month is beyond me when I've been with the district for 10 years. I have another employee that I talked to who that increase is going to put him at $128.37 less a month for that increase that he did not approve, that he was not okay with, that the district was, though. I have another employee that I talked to that would only make $44.45 more a month, and that breaks down to $11 a week in a pay increase with the benefits. I have another employee who would make $120. I have 2 sheets full of employees that I've talked to of how much less they're going to make a month with this increase that was not accepted by us, that was accepted by the district. We were ready to talk to Kaiser. The district said, we are okay with these numbers. None of us ever did. And the opportunity to have a discussion with Kaiser to possibly figure out, I don't know, a unicorn plan for us or something that was more reasonable was lost when the district came in and said, we're good with this. We never said we were good with this.
I appreciate your story, and no one is trying to undermine the benefits conversation. I think what we're seeking here is just clarity around what's being proposed in terms of benefits. Is this an ongoing proposal? I think essentially is what Phil's question was.
What we would like to see is for the district to take this on, because the district was comfortable with it. In the meantime, the Benefits Advisory Committee, and which is put together, I don't know how many of you know this, it's 3 Jespa members, 3 JCEA members, and 3 JCAA members. It would be for the district to take this on because the district was comfortable with it, and to use this year to come up with better solutions, whether that is starting an RFP, but we need long-term solutions for our ESPs. We are the lowest wage earners, and so take this on.
So a percentage also would hopefully provide the district with some incentive to negotiate with the companies. Because I don't know how long it was 529. It was very long without an increase. And so anytime the companies increase premiums, those increases were passed to employees, except for the worst plan, which kept getting worse and worse in order for it to maintain, the district paying for it. And so a percentage, we think, if you all have to help pay for the increase, maybe you won't just let the companies pass those costs on to us and let's negotiate. So
Thanks for the clarity on that. Any other questions, points of clarification from our team on the Jespa's proposal?
I just have a quick question because I want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So you are saying your stance on the percentage is for this year, and we would be negotiating based upon the results of the VAC as well as the pricing and moving on with our carriers or choosing another carrier or whatever, and be renegotiated the following year?
I mean, our counter is that we've got to have a conversation about percentages. And if you all are going to counter with flat dollar amounts, we need to see a plan that you all commit to get to percentages. I mean, we're not going to back off of percentages, and there needs to be something concrete. I mean,
I'm not saying percentages are flat. I'm just saying, Is it going to be negotiated every year based upon the current state?
I don't know. I guess it depends what we come to. But our preference is a percentage premium so that employees, A, have better coverage, can choose better plans, have a larger portion of that taken on by the district when premiums increase. And hopefully when premiums increase and the district sees their cost going up, you all will maybe negotiate harder with the companies for better rates or find a different solution, which we've also tried to propose other ideas. So they're out there. But we don't feel, obviously, that we're being worked with and heard about insurance. The superintendent's telling us all the time, we'll work with you, we want to work with you. And then we turn around and go to another meeting and it's the opposite. So we want to know which one it is and just see a good faith effort put into it and a plan that we have, that you listen to ESPs in. So
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you.
I'm not sure I made that much more clear, but.
And I think, from our perspective, we believe we are trying to work with you. We've made some adjustments based on what we believe to be more alignment or closer alignment with your interests that you've expressed throughout this process, but it still feels very far apart, right? I'm sure for both of us. And, I think our commitment to taking some more time to study your proposal is showing a good faith effort to work collaboratively with you, despite the fact that we haven't necessarily settled on any one amount of anything that's been put up there so far. Any other questions? Okay. We had Jespa Article 6 up next. Would you propose we go to Article 4?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get it set up. I'll also send you our counter. I'm going to send it to you too. Do you want to drop it in our shared file? Okay, moving right along into Article 4. This would be the Echo version for today, and we've had an opportunity to go through your counter proposal. We're back and forth how many times now? And so just want to review this with you. I sent our copy to both Vicki, you, and Xander. And so looking at this document, I think we're in agreement on 411. I think we came to that conclusion before. In 412,
Phil? Sorry for the blind ones. Can you blow it up a little bit?
No, that's fair enough. I'm looking at my screen. That's
Thank you so much.
good catch, Trevor. How's that? Does that work out for you? All right, helps with people in the back too. Sorry. So, fortunately, we didn't get too far along with it. So 412, and again, we're talking about work assignments here, position advertising 412. I think we're generally in agreement with the exception of we added back into this article because of the specific locations for posting of positions. That, you know, there needs to be that exception of pool positions and positions that are assigned by district departments, only because we can't always specify where a position will be located in anticipation of. Oftentimes, our special education department, custodial department may post positions for recruiting purposes in anticipation, and then be able to discuss with candidates the actual location of positions. So that was we added that back in just as a necessity for how we actually do our work in the hiring process. And you'll notice that our changes I had additions back to the article are in a purple color, and I know it's hard to delineate from a distance, so I'll try to be clear as we go through this article. I think we are in agreement with 414 with the language changes there. We talked about 4.2 changes in work location, and I think we were in agreement that that's a good title for that section. We did go back and take a look at this. We know that we struck through all this article. You added it back, and we're ready to move on and keep the old language intact. The application process, if we filter down through here, you had added in 441 into that first sentence selection or second sentence, selection committees must be composed of at least 3 members, one of which is a Jespa employee as provided by Article 1.7. You had added in who do not have a conflict of interest, and we're not sure what that actually means. It seems very broad, and could be very biased. So we struck that phrase that you had added. Going to 444, I think we are pretty close in agreement there. Under C, when we're talking about applicants overall, we put relevant work history and relevant experience. Looking at the measured by years of service, that would be specific to potentially for seniority in Jeffco. And I think there's some pitfalls with that in looking at candidates from outside of Jeffco in our recruitment process. And then going to D, we had the language reference check conducted by the hiring manager, and you had added to that with consent from the candidate. And then all references must be asked the same questions, and the answers must be documented. That's an HR function. One of the things that I think needs to be known too is that in the application process, there is a portion that asks, as you list your previous employment history, if the employer, in this case the district, us, if we can contact a previous supervisor. And there's a pull down, there's a checkbox that says yes or no. And it also provides the contact information. So that already exists. And, we believe that's a good practice because there will be people who don't want their supervisors to know that they're actually out looking for another job. And that's just the market we're in. And in all fairness to them, we already have that in the system. Moving to 445, we only modified that. I think we're generally in agreement. The last sentence that says, should the hiring manager reject the recommendation, the rejection reason will be documented and subject to review by HR and Jespa. That's an HR function, and I think certainly you are more than welcome to question a rejection of a recommendation, but actually having the opportunity to review the documents, et cetera, being that the hiring process is a confidential process, we don't believe is appropriate. In 446, we've accepted your language there. No changes. In 45, did something a little different here. We've got the probationary period, and then you had added a request for orientation for new employees, and we have some new language that we're actually putting in 452, and we'll have to adjust the numerical sequence. But we certainly appreciate that your interest with that 90 work days for probationary period. So we modified the language, and this has to do with the practicality of the work and working with our HR department, spending time talking about what we can do and what we need to do for new employees. And so this is all new language that hopefully will address the new employee orientation. And that is, the district will provide an optional in-person new employee orientation each month beginning in January 2024 for 90 minutes to provide information pertaining to pay, benefits, policies, procedures, and all other information determined by Human Resources to be important for new employees. Because if it's too prescriptive, you don't always get the opportunity to provide the newest, the latest, the greatest information. And we do think that that's also an opportunity as a place to welcome new employees and have that opportunity to welcome them to the new culture in Jeffco. If the orientation is during and I wanted to make this clear, that if orientation is during the employee's normal work schedule, they'll be paid at their regular rate. If it's not, if it's outside, for example, if we have a nighttime custodian or someone who's worked after hours, we're not going to be offering the orientation, during the evenings, but it'll be during the day. But if they do need to come to that, we believe that they should be paid at their normal rate. And of course, if they exceed their hours, they're overtime eligible. It is expected that departments and schools will provide orientation specific to their workplace for all new employees during their work schedule. And that is saying and emphasizing, we know it happens, and we know departments do. Many of our departments do a really great job with introducing. I think the language you were using is training. We think it's more of orientation. There may be training involved in that orientation, but what we're saying is we need to have an orientation specific to the workplace, and we would expect that so that new employees can hit the ground running, feel comfortable in their new workplace, et cetera. So that's completely new language that we hope you appreciate and corresponds with your request. And we do value the in-person new employee orientation and having people come here or wherever the designated location is. And in talking with our HR team, the reason why we said beginning in January 2024 is because it's going to take some time to launch this and get it going and get it ready. And so expecting it to be done between now and August is just not real practical. And we want to commit to this and think that it's important to get this going. So we did quantify or did put a date on it as to when we could begin. And I know you had indicated 4 hours worth. We think that 90 minutes can cover what needs to be covered for new employees. And the other piece that's I think real important is this isn't exclusive to Jespa employees. This is for all employees. Okay, and so we think 90 minutes can cover the important pieces that new employees need to help them be successful here in Jeffco. And, if we find that more time is needed or we need to modify that, we certainly should and could. But we think 90 minutes is a pretty good starting point. Committing to a 4-hour time block, we wouldn't want people to have to spend 4 hours with us just for the sake of spending 4 hours with us when there's no real purpose or intentionality. And so the 90 minutes seems very reasonable, and we can cover a lot of information and help new employees out in that amount of time. Okay, and then again, numbering needs to be reworked there. And moving down, maintaining qualifications. We talked about your language. We had many conversations with department leaders with regards to this topic. And we do think that the district may be able to provide support or resources to assist employees to maintain requisite credentials related to their positions, but to commit to covering all costs of education, licensures, and endorsements for employees may not be realistic for us. And so we're saying, we've got to have some flexibility there with being able to do that. And then under 473, essentially, we went back to the original language down at the bottom, which indicates that if an employee is required to attend district-related functions or trainings to reacquire the necessary qualifications, the employee will be paid at their normal rate of pay. So we reverted back to original language. 474, I think we were on the same page with. And then I put a notation in here with regards to the ratios. This is a big task. I mean, it's monumental when we think about the ideal. And I think we talked a little bit about this would be the ideal. And we put a notation in that we just simply need more time to conduct research concerning the impact and implications. I mean, obviously cost is a huge factor. But we also, in considering looking at staffing ratios, minimum hours, et cetera, that's a pretty large, big thing to do, monumental thing to do. And it's not to say that we don't agree conceptually with a lot of what you have asked for. It's just the practicality of and the cost of putting this together. And it really does come down to priorities and how we establish those priorities. But we need time to really look into this. And I know that I think you had put a cost of about $10 million into the paraprofessional minimum staffing. That we don't know exactly where that came from, and not questioning that number at all. But we also have to keep in mind that as we're adding to the budget, it's ongoing expenses that move on until there has to be some major adjustments in staffing levels. So we put the notation there not as we're completely ignoring this, even though we did have a strike through initially. We just need to have more time to talk about what kind of impact this would have on the district. And I believe that is it for Article 4. Would you like for me to scroll back from the top in case you have questions going through this? Or you have, I think, at least a couple of you have copies. Any questions initially? Would you like for me to scroll through or no?
I think so. Yeah. I think the 10 million, by the way, came from one of the earlier sessions where we talked about a para. I think y'all counted up classrooms and then we counted teachers to see how many more paras we would need.
Yeah. Yeah, we knew that was a ballpark number that we were throwing around. Keep scrolling.
I was looking at John over there, moving his microphone closer.
I'm waiting for 452.
Get there fast. I'm assuming we can scroll through 4.2 since we went back to the original language.
It does, I mean, just to note, it does then tie to wording that the district used to use the term reassignment, which would have referred to this article, but now the article is going back, so it might have ties to other parts of this article that we need to update. Conflict of interest. So we talked about this a little last time to make sure you all knew what we meant. There's a legal definition or a common definition of conflict. And, we just don't want to see an admin maybe stacking a committee in order to get a preferred candidate. We don't want the gaming of the system to happen. Or I'm going to, figure out how to have a couple of different favorites or somebody that does not like this candidate in order to get this candidate in. I pulled up the definition. A conflict of interest occurs when an individual's personal interests, family, friendships, financial, or social factors could compromise his or her judgment, decisions, or actions in the workplace. Government agencies take conflicts of interest so seriously that they are regulated. We should regulate them here in Jeffco. So I think you said when you were scrolling that you weren't sure what we meant by it, so you struck it. But is that?
I think as the language stands alone, it's ambiguous, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that could mean a number of different things to a number of different people without more clarity.
Okay.
But the intent behind it, we fully recognize and acknowledge.
Gotcha. Okay.
And you said on 444D, that you struck with consent from candidate, all references must be asked same questions, because that was HR standard practice, right? And our question, I think, was why would we strike it then? Why would we take it out of the contract if it was standard practice, if it's just protecting our employees?
That's a good question. We do have a standard set of reference questions, but that doesn't mean that the conversation doesn't lead into other questions. So if we're saying we're painting ourselves into, as hiring managers, painting ourselves into corners that we can't ask anything other than the 6 or 7 or 8 questions, that can be problematic because oftentimes there are other questions that can get asked. And, when we're talking about reference questions, essentially we're talking about questions about a person's work history, about their performance. And we are very clear with hiring managers that none of the questions can include anything that could even come close to any sort of discriminatory action. And, so it's pretty clear, but there's often questions that, if I'm hiring an electrician and we have a standard set of questions from HR, there may be some other questions that I would want to ask an electrician's current supervisor or former supervisor about the performance of an electrician. Not that I, John, know anything about electricity, but just using that as an example. So there is, but again, we don't want to paint ourselves into a corner. And the other thing too is that those questions can and oftentimes do evolve.
And I think with our language in there, what we were getting at with that ask the same questions and the answers must be documented was to prevent in-house conflicts of interest, as we just talked about. So, for example, if John's supervisor didn't like him and he was going for a different position or high position, that those answers would have to be, their questions would have to be the same and documented so that they couldn't say, oh, he's a horrible employee because that supervisor didn't want him to move up into a better position. So we're trying to prevent that discrimination from within. Outside, we absolutely get checking references. So it's we're trying to prevent the in-house nepotism and discrimination is what we're trying to prevent. And I think we discussed this when we first initially went over. So I think I'm just trying to clarify our point on this one. So I think that language still protects that all the answers should be the question should be the same and documented so that there's a record of what's actually going on and who said what. So.
So I know what you're saying, Phil, about how all questions should be, like, you should have flexibility. I have filled out references for a few people recently, and the application, the check reference comes from electronically, and the questions are all the same, and you can put not applicable for this department. She was applying for a dental assistant, but so I could just put not applicable. So you could do one application for all departments and just put NA.
Yeah, there are systems out there that have the electronic, if you're an applicant, automatically the references you've listed on your application are sent to your references. And it's an automated process, and there are standard sets of questions. But reference checks aren't exclusive to the electronic systems, because oftentimes there's kind of a starting point, and then if a person makes it through a certain level, they are calling supervisors and having that one-on-one conversation that can lead in a lot of different directions.
No, I get the discussion. I'm just saying you can have the same questions for everybody. I don't know.
Yes, and you're right. John, we're almost at 4 or 5. Want to get to 452 directly? Is that where we're looking at, John?
I guess I'm just wondering why it's optional.
Yeah, good question. There may be some folks who simply don't see the value in it, and to force them to do something that they don't see value in, doesn't sit well with folks. And, we may consider a new employee somebody who is very familiar with Jeffco, never worked in Jeffco, but may have had kids here, knows the district well, may have a relative who works here. They've got all the information they need, and certainly don't want them to feel like they absolutely have to attend. So the optional piece is we don't want people to feel like they have to do this. We feel like this will be beneficial to them, which is the purpose for creating it, but forcing people to do something that they don't find value in doesn't feel good on our part.
In addition,
If they,
Go ahead.
I'm going to jump in, John. But if they don't feel value in it, wouldn't they just not show up?
That makes it optional versus us telling them they have to be there. Yeah.
So first, we also have automated online onboarding. So a lot of the information that would be presented with also some nuances in culture, right? If you're going to be in person, is provided. So some people might not feel like they need to. And then just to answer your question, Sarah, around like, why wouldn't they just show? Well, if we make it mandatory and they don't show, then that is a personnel issue then that I don't think we want to have happen, I guess, because if they no show, I guess we would just say they're absent. But then we have some pay structures because we're paying them to come. And I mean, I just see there could be other like repercussions of having that mandatory written in the contract that would be unforeseen and would become negative potentially within HR structures.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've had that orientation or the one I had, but I guess I don't know what exactly it's going to be. Of course, I envision Jespa being a part of it so that they understand they're going to be working under a contract and whatnot. I don't know if you guys would be envisioning policy and stuff like that, but I guess I kind of am. It's and humans to actually ask questions and whatnot. So I understand what you're saying, and that's definitely a reason for it to be optional. I guess I would hope that orientation could possibly set people off on the right foot and maybe give them an option, maybe make it optional after that to not work here if they were not interested in what's offered in an orientation. I guess I've never worked anywhere where I would have showed up and been like, yeah, we'll see you on the job. Is there a movie I can watch? I mean, that's great. But anyway, and I'm not trying to say anything
No, and I appreciate your comments, and as someone who went to the orientation way back in the day as well. And I just want to also say the 90-minute piece is because we used to spend about an hour to an hour and a half with actual paper to pencil filling out forms. So we looked at what we used to provide too. So that's the time frame part was that question of what did we do and why was it 4 hours? And it was, we actually did the paperwork and submitted documents that we do that online now that are automated. And to your point, I would hope anyone would come and ask their questions. And, we will be obviously providing experts in the fields that of the people are going to have questions like payroll, benefits, compensation records, those kind of things available as part of that orientation. So, and this is going to be an orientation, just to be clear, for all employees, because we feel like, as you said, we value what you said, and we value building a culture across all employee groups.
Thank you. That's important to me also, the cultural piece.
And it is for me. I'm looking back to when I started with the district nearly, a long time ago. And the orientation was mandatory, and I could not set foot in the door as an employee until I finished the orientation. And it did set the tone for culture and expectations, and it set everybody off on the proper foot, and we knew what to expect. And, because of that, I think that helped me stay in the district for as long as I have.
I think that's a good point. And to kind of piggyback on what Deneen was saying, as a old schooler myself, I've been around for way too long. The paper and pencil process, the personalized approach, to me, is still the best approach. But we have to recognize that we've entered the electronic digital world. And the reason why the district several years ago got away from in-person is because of the automated system. But I think you've brought this to our attention, and we've been thinking it all along. But it's important for you to bring this to our attention, the importance of it, because we need to have a more personalized approach. And that's really hard to do in a big place like Jeffco. But we went the automated route because it's more efficient, more streamlined. But I think people fall through the cracks and people don't get everything that they need necessarily. But we also know that there are people that are super tech savvy, unlike me, who would need more hands-on personalized attention. But there are folks that would say, you know what, I got this. I've done my benefits paperwork. I've done all my onboarding. I've read through the policies. I've checked off all the boxes that say that I know about mandatory reporting and all the rules and regs of the district and blah, blah, blah. And they would say, yeah, I don't need to go sit through 90 minutes of more policies, procedures, et cetera, just because I think there are those, especially the younger generations, who grasp that a lot quicker than some of us old dogs. So
You're also going to get people that check the boxes and they don't take the time to read it. So to keep the culture on the same level, it's nice to ensure that everybody has the same information. And if you, I don't know, I'm not going to suggest anything until
Right. When we had come up with the idea for this orientation, we discussed it at length, and a big part of it was explaining, benefits and pair and all that. But the other part was culture was a big part, because that is a huge issue in Jeffco right now. And I would hope to have it as a mandatory, and I hate that word. It sounds awful, but that you have to do this orientation before you start work or while you're working, would be a great place for you guys to introduce them to the Thrive initiative, because that's what we're trying to do. That's what Thrive is trying to do, is get this culture back to where it needs to be. So just know that was a big part of us wanting to bring back in-person orientation, was to get the culture back to where it needs to be, because as we see it, it's a big part of why we're where we're at right now. So I would think you would want to take advantage of that time to use that to get people to be familiar with the Thrive initiative. So
would have absolutely no issue with including the cultural piece into this language. We make an assumption that would be included, but I can tell you that in my conversations with HR, specifically with our CHRO, Jen Jones, and a few others, yes, a welcome from our superintendent, a welcome from our deputy superintendent, a welcome from our CHRO, a welcome from our school board president or other members of the board as an introduction to Jeffco would be awesome. And so we've talked about a lot of different ideas from a cultural aspect in introducing our strategic plan, Jeffco Thrives, et cetera. So we didn't intentionally leave that out. We made the assumption that has to be a part of this process. And if we need to delineate that or identify it and make that more clear, we're happy to do that. So good point. I appreciate that.
Quick, I guess, on that note, I was thinking about, we brought this orientation up maybe multiple years in a row, but I think we discussed it last year. And Laura would say similar, like, I felt important when I went to orientation. I felt welcomed. It felt like I was valued by the district. So there was a feeling to it that was important. We did come up with some language in Article 2. So we countered your probationary period language with, if you're going to do that, we want orientation. So good. We appreciate adding orientation here, but it might make more sense going with the other orientation language that's in Article 2. So it currently kind of alludes to the online orientation as it is. And that Jespa and the district, it says Jespa and the district agree that it is important for employees to understand the terms of their employment as provided in this agreement. Therefore, Jespa will be provided an opportunity to present at department or group staff meetings or trainings to inform staff of relevant agreement terms. Jespa shall have at least 15 minutes to present. And then the addition 21541 was the district must include Jespa produced orientation video to the online orientation, and the district will include Jespa in future orientation planning sessions. So we had kind of heard when David was here, yeah, we want to do in person, not ready, but we'll include you in the planning sessions. So now you have to include us in the planning sessions, is what I'm trying to say. Thanks, David.
Sure do. I don't have any more comments. All right.
We'll keep scrolling here. And that was the other change. Any questions there? And again, 473 is just reverting back to original language. And then the last was just the notation.
Have you all talked about how much time you think it would take to research?
I can't quantify that, but I can tell you we have a lot of people looking at this, and each of the departments. I know Mark has spent time, and several others. So we're working on it, but amongst other things, we don't have anything definite. I really can't answer the question at this time.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? John, you want to go back to 4 or 5? Any other questions with regards to Article 4?
I think we're good for now.
Okay. Okay. I think the only other item we had on tonight's agenda, and I know we only have, looks like 12 or 13 minutes remaining, was the Article 6, and I know you had indicated earlier, with all due respect, that wanting to tie that to the compensation piece, so we're not going to beg the question or anything of the kind, but it would appear that we probably need to have a brief conversation around agenda for our next meeting. And start a preparation with the idea that we know we will be coming back with a counter proposal to your compensation proposal. Hopefully we can dive into 6 a little bit more in the process, and maybe we can get close to finalizing Article 4. Other thoughts?
This is the 18th, right?
Yes.
Is it 5 to 9 Thursday instead of 4 to 8? Or is my calendar wrong?
That's what mine says.
5 to 9? Okay.
Yeah, that's what it says on our calendars.
Okay.
Do you want to consider starting that at 4?
There must have been a reason we scheduled it for 5. If that's not a conflict
Maybe.
anymore, then we could.
Let's look at the boardroom. Maybe it's a boardroom
Yeah.
conflict.
That's true.
Yeah, when I remember we were scheduling it, we tried to do it at 4, and you said something about the boardroom.
I think it's a boardroom.
I think there's also some graduations that day, but I don't know that it would prevent us from being here at 4 if the room was available. So.
Yeah, well, I think there's events before.
Oh, got it.
Say that. It was intentional.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're good. So plan for next time will be counter proposal from district on compensation, get into Article 6 a little bit, continue our conversation around Article 4. And I think, I know you had asked last time about the grievance article. We'll have language for that that's simple and no major changes, but just want to hopefully improve the process.
Okay.
Does that make
Doing
sense?
okay on the process, I think.
We are. That's why we're not like, we got to change this or we need
Yeah.
to do something different. And
But in
we're,
case anyone leaves, we got to capture
that's true.
the grievance process.
Right. True. Yep. Okay. Anything else for the good of the cause this evening? All right.
I know Matt said he's worried that we're far apart. I don't think we are. I think there's movement going, right? I'm hearing you're concerned about percentages. Bring back a counter, right? I just,
You can count.
do-
You can count on a counter.
I don't think we're as far apart as what I'm hearing.
We appreciate that in all seriousness, and thank you for the conversation this afternoon, this evening, and we look forward to getting together with you next week, and hopefully we can inch that much closer. Thanks so much.